Hi, I'm Ellen Roderick, a 44-year member of Maryland Beta chapter. I first met Agnes in the late 1970s when she came to Washington, D.C. to do planning for the 1983 International Convention in Washington, D.C. I did not get to know her then. I simply was introduced to her. I had a very interesting one-on-one contact or interaction with Agnes that I will never forget. And this is really how I met her. In 1981, I received a letter from Agnes, personally signed by her, in which she asked me to serve on the International Constitution and Bylaws Committee for the biennium, for the 1981-83 biennium. Well, I read that letter and I was flabbergasted. I had many questions in my head, and as we often do, I set the letter aside and thought, I need to ask somebody some questions about this. What would my responsibilities be in all of this? I had no idea what it would involve. And number two, I was an 8-year member of the organization, and what did I really know about the bylaws, especially the international bylaws? Well, 1 week passed, exactly 1 week from when I opened that letter, and I received a phone call. And I guess you can imagine who that phone call was from. It was from Agnes. This is the way Agnes opened that phone call. Ellen, did you receive my letter? Well, I quickly responded, yes, Agnes. Ellen, are you accepting the request to serve on the committee? Well, without hesitation, I was so intimidated and so confused by it all that I immediately said yes. And do you think I had the nerve to ask any questions at that point? Of course not. Agnes sent a message to me that day and for many years to come after that. And that is that Agnes was a persistent, determined individual, a very tenacious type of person who really had the spunk and the vigor and the determination to found this great organization of which we are a part. She demonstrated that then, and she demonstrated that for the rest of the years that I knew her. That was my first experience, real experience with Agnes. I did serve on that committee. I served on other international committees. But by the time that I was elected to international office, Agnes had died. While I served on those committees, though, I had the opportunity to travel to headquarters to meet with the leadership and to meet with Agnes. And so I saw her up close and personal from 1981 until I finally greeted her in Las Vegas at the convention, and thereafter she passed away. Now, as I thought about her leadership, 3 elements stand out to me, aside from her persistence, aside from her determination. Agnes had a vision. And we give short shift to that sometimes. Well, yes, you have a vision. But Agnes constantly shared that vision, and she never wavered from it. Never. And that's the difference between a mediocre leader and a top-notch leader. That vision was before her from the moment she began thinking about an organization for women educators. The second characteristic that I found very significant was that she surrounded herself with highly competent women educators who shared that vision and who were willing to devote thousands of volunteer hours to this organization. When a leader can entice others to come along on the journey and to give of themselves, their talents, and their time, that sends a message that that leader, Agnes Shipman Robertson, truly was dynamic. And a third element that I saw her is that she never met a stranger. I watched at the International Convention in 1983 in Washington, D.C., as many, many sisters were introduced to her, both up in her suite and on the floor of the convention. And she took the time to ask each of those women, and sometimes their spouses as well, where they came from, what their interests were, why they joined Alpha Delta Kappa. She showed a dynamic interest in each person that she met. And even better than that, she remembered those women. She may not have remembered their names, but the faces she remembered and their backgrounds she remembered. I was asked also to think about what were some of the really dynamic dimensions of her time as our founder and as our leader. And I thought of three that have a lot of meaning for me and still have a lot of meaning for this sorority. Agnes began with developing chapters in the continental United States. However, as the sorority grew, she expanded her attention to Hawaii, to Alaska. But then, lo and behold, she decided that this could be an international organization. Now, think about the times that she was doing that. We are talking about in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. She was looking at Canada, Mexico, bringing them into the fold, as I say. She was looking at England. She was looking at Australia. This woman thought globally long before that term, globalization, became a part of our everyday vocabulary. Agnes was a global thinker and doer. The second aspect that I find to be quite dynamic, and at first I didn't think too much of it, but the impact that it's had on so many of us, I believe it is very significant. Agnes decided that we would have our own headquarters and our own staff, a paid staff. Well, think about someone who is going to get a building built that is not one's own home. That was risky business then, but she put a lot of faith in the members who contributed toward bonds that built that beautiful headquarters. Building that building and hiring staff sent a message to the members at that time and to future members as we recruited. We, in fact, are a dynamic organization that can stand by our organization, not only with people, but with a beautiful building where we can come together and foster Alpha Delta Kappa. A third aspect that I used to hear Agnes talk about and that we work on in our chapter to this day, and that is telling Alpha Delta Kappa's story to our colleagues and to the world. Agnes always encouraged us to tell our story, get our teachers, our members out there as they were honored and recognized for their achievements. Have stories written, get them into the newspapers, tell our story to anyone who would listen to us or read the papers or read letters or whatever mode of communication we could use and foster. She wanted us, the members, to be recognized and honored in the communities, in the cities, in the states, in the country. Now, how is all of this carried over to where we find our leadership today and the directions that we are going in and the changes that are before us that we have been making and we will continue to make? Just think about Agnes and wanting teachers out there being honored and recognized and rewarded. We continue in Alpha Delta Kappa to add scholarships. Now we have grants programs. We have what has worked out to be a beautiful aspect of our sorority and recognition program, which is our excellence in education program. And as we craft those, recraft them, add dimensions to those programs, the roots are based in the ideas that Agnes and many of our leaders who are gone now established for us and continue to this day. Another aspect of it is that this expansion, I understand from talking with our international leaders, this expansion is continuing, that there has been a commitment made to expand in the northwest parts of Canada. I am excited about that. I am encouraged about that. This is our sister nation, and what dynamic leaders that would only enrich us are available to us. So Agnes's legacy has carried on, and the leaders, our international chapter, our international executive board, they are crafting the future of Alpha Delta Kappa, as I believe Agnes would want us all to do.